That's where I want to welcome in our first guest, political strategist and senior vice president of Definer's Public Relations, Colin Reed. Colin, thanks for being here. So,
hey guys, thanks for having me.
Great to have you. These 11th hour stumps, being out there, shaking hands, kissing babies, meeting the voters at the supermarket before they go to vote. Does it make a difference on Election Day?
Well, it can, and having worked for a number of candidates, you never want to leave anything out there. And if an election comes down to a couple points, that person that you saw on the way to the grocery store, or the one that you gave a cup of coffee to as they went in to vote, that can make all the difference. So Election Day is not a fun day for people on campaigns because you're all kind of a bundle of nerves. So being out there and actually doing something productive like that, it's better than just sitting around and chewing your nails or drinking. I think every little bit counts.
Right. I want to make sure, to be clear, we're not condoning that anybody start drinking at this time of the day.
Yeah, not this early.
Save it till the polls close.
You get home, your car's in the garage, you're safe, then you can have a drink. All right, Colin,
you guys started that conversation, not me.
That's right. That's right. I just want to clarify that, though.
You've worked on a number of different and successful political campaigns over the years. Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown's 2014 campaign. You worked on Mitt Romney's presidential campaign. You were also former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie's communications director. Now, early voter turnout this year has broken election. In a state like Florida, where I believe as of this morning, 6 or 7 million have already early voted. What is the most effective tactic for a candidate on Election Day to, like you say, push them over the edge in those razor-thin margin races?
Well, you're absolutely right. A lot of votes have already been cast, and people are disagreeing as to who that benefits more or benefits less. I would argue the Republicans typically have an inherent built-in advantage during midterms because that's when Republican voters tend to show up more so than in presidential years, and the Democratic side has an advantage. So in a lot of these races, the die has been cast to a degree, but again, you want to be out there and not leaving anything to chance. But in all these things, message matters more than anything, and message matters more than money, and the message is what drives you down to use a sports analogy here, it's what drives you down the field. And then all this stuff we're talking about the last day, it's just whether or not you can kind of punch into the end zone. But in many ways, the die has been cast in a lot of these races by the time you and I are all talking today.
Now, Colin, we talked about the early voting, and this is somewhat anecdotal information here, but at my polling location this morning, the line was actually longer than it was during the 2016 presidential election. I've seen pictures from polling places in Indiana, Brooklyn, New York, other places across Florida, and you're seeing long lines. We've heard that voting totals, once the final votes are counted, are going to blow 2014 out of the water. What do you think is the main driving factor to getting people out and voting so much in this election? Is it Donald Trump or is it something else?
Well, I think both sides, left and right, are extremely animated and fired up right now. And I think President Trump has been out there and he has put this election on his shoulders and said, make this a referendum on me. And the left on the other side, they've had Barack Obama out there who's tried to fire up his base. And what people forget is when you fire up one base, you fire up the other base. So I think both sides have kind of said, hey, let's make this a base election. Let's see who can get out the most votes. And let's just drive the numbers on our respective sides. So we know that I think is what's driving these huge turnout numbers. What remains to be seen, especially in some of these House races, is where folks are going to break down the middle. Because the Senate map is so solidly red, whereas the House map is taking place in blue and purple parts of the country that will be more of an uphill climb for Republicans. So it's in many ways, it's two different battles taking place on two very different sets of terrain.
So, but I want to further on what John asked you, Colin. The Republicans have a message. The economy is doing great. Immigration resonates with voters. Even Tom Brokaw on Meet the Press this weekend had to contradict Savannah Guthrie and say, no, by every measure, by every metric, the economy is in great shape. So Republicans have a message to run on. Republican voters are voting for something. All Democrats have done is say, well, Brett Kavanaugh is a serial sexual molester. That was debunked and taken out. Donald Trump's a racist. Donald Trump's a misogynist. Democrats seem to be voting against something. And again, to what John said, are they voting against Trump? Is that the motivator getting Democrats out to the polls? If not, what is? Because I haven't heard a consistent, cohesive message from Democratic candidates.
Well, that's because one doesn't exist. They have no message. They didn't have a message in 2016. Hillary Clinton had no economic message, and it's one of the reasons that Donald Trump was able to put those states that had been in the blue column, flip them red for the first time in three decades. So, and again, that is why I think both sides have kind of shouldered the responsibility for this. And Donald Trump has said, yeah, make this a referendum on me. Make it a referendum on the economy, which is, by all accounts, roaring. Make it a referendum on the judges that he has successfully confirmed, and let's see where the die falls. Look, some of these senators in red states, they cast the final nail in their political coffin when they voted against Brett Kavanaugh. These are places that President Trump won by 20, 30, in some cases 40 points. And for these senators to be openly defying the will of their voters did not make smart politics. But it goes beyond that. These senators like Claire McCaskill and Joe Donnelly and John Tester and Joe Manchin have spent the last 6, 12, 18 years casting liberal votes for Chuck Schumer, and they stand much closer to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders than they do the people in their state. So in a lot of ways, the chickens are coming home to roost for some of those folks tonight.
Colin, John talked about the economy. That certainly is a selling point for Republicans. And we heard some of these stories about Paul Ryan calling the president and saying, look, Mr. President, I wish you would have focused more on the economy than on immigration. Colin, if you were advising any candidate or even President Trump on their closing argument before today, would it be immigration or would it focus more on the economy?
Well, look, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think Republican and conservative voters are smart enough to be able to talk about both those things. I worked in a race in New Hampshire for Scott Brown in 2014, and that, as you will recall, is when the border crisis first started breaking out, and Scott Brown talked about that relentlessly. Unfortunately, we didn't win that race, but it was the issue that made it close. So you can do that, and you can also run on the economic record. But the thing is, these Democrats are against both. They opposed everything the president did economically. They all opposed his tax cuts en masse, and they all, save Joe Manchin, voted against Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. So, and on immigration, it's become a very dividing line. It used to be that Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives could find some areas of agreement on a simple factor like securing the border. Now, no one on the left will even talk about wanting to secure the border because they're afraid of offending their far left base. So there's two good issues to talk about. There are two good issues to prosecute, and I think they both work most everywhere voters are.
All right, let's talk about bipartisanship for a moment. Let's listen to what President Trump said at the rally last night about that very issue. Do we have that clip of President Trump? Well, I guess we're going to have to... But the president, oh, here we go.
I shouldn't say this because I want to unite. I do eventually want to unite, but the fact is we're driving them crazy. We're driving them crazy. They don't know what to do. They're going loco. That's all right. Hopefully it's going to all come together someday like a beautiful puzzle.
Now, the president's admitting, Colin, he's admitting that the Democrats are being driven crazy by his rhetoric, but also in an interview last night with Sinclair Broadcasting, the president said he would like to use a softer tone in the future. He also said that he is, in a sense, on the ticket today. Now, do you think we're ever going to see a kinder, gentler Donald Trump, especially immediately post-midterm?
Well, I think he's probably going to stick with what got him to where he's at now, and he's got a style. Look, Donald Trump tapped into a real feeling of resentment and economic angst in this country, and it helped propel him to victory, and he's smart enough to channel what's in the minds of the voters. It helped him get through the primary, and it helped him beat Hillary Clinton in 2016. So I think he's more attuned to the mood of the electorate than people will let on. But we'll see what tomorrow brings. Just as favorable as the map is for Donald Trump and the Republicans in the Senate, I think folks are very wide-eyed about the challenges they face in the House side. So we'll see what tomorrow, what the light of day brings in terms of potentially a new alignment in Washington.
It's hard to ignore the enthusiasm you see at the Trump rallies that you have seen, and how important President Trump clearly is to getting those folks interested and making sure they get to the polls. But Colin, the New York Times published an article yesterday titled "Trump Closes Out a Campaign Built on Fear, Anger, and Division." This is kind of what I was talking about. I want to get your reaction to one paragraph in that article. Quote, Mr. Trump's fiery, invective-filled campaigning produced what may be the post-polarized midterm contest in modern times, the most polarized midterm contest in modern times, as he played to tribal rifts in American society in a way that no president has done since before the civil rights era. The divisions exposed and expanded over the past few weeks seem certain to last well beyond Election Day. Is this the new normal? I mean, is there going to be no coalescence going on behind anyone after these midterms? Are we just in this permanent state of campaigning, this permanent state of tribal politics?
Well, I mean, this country was divided before Donald Trump came on the scene. I think that was Barack Obama who said that. So I don't necessarily think it's fair to blame him for everything that's happening right now. I think that's too short-sighted. But the one thing that is going to happen is the day after tomorrow, or maybe even tomorrow, that 2020 Democratic field is going to start forming. And it's going to be 20, maybe 30, maybe 40 people deep. It's going to make the 2016 Republican primary look small by comparison. And those folks are going to be angry. They are going to be channeling a lot of really radical far-left ideas. And they are going to be pushing themselves further and further to the extreme. And they are going to be tapping into all those angry voters out there as well on their side. So that Democratic primary field is not going to make things any better, because they're going to be pushing each other to the left to get as far over there as they can and appeal to these voters that have really taken over the Democratic Party. That, like, John F. Kennedy or even Bill Clinton.
Yeah, can you imagine John F. Kennedy meeting Michael Avenatti?
No, I could not, nor even acknowledging that he existed.
Yeah.
Colin Reed, former communications director for New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Colin, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more breaking news coverage, exclusive interviews, and great videos, click over here to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And don't forget to download the free Newsmax TV app. Newsmax TV, it's real news for real people.